Hello, BookTube. I saw a video earlier today by Shawn the Book Maniac, I'll leave a link to it down below, in which he revisits his very first book haul. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. I had a feature a little while ago where I started going through my videos, book by book by book, and then that fell off because I noticed how many of the books I was bringing up from years ago were just blah. They weren't worth talking about. They weren't worth reflecting on. And in my own mind, that was a reinforcement of the fact that most books, just in general, are like that. Not just on this channel, but anywhere. And so I sort of let it go. But I was watching Shawn's video where he actually shows clips of himself from back in 2017, and it looked like a lot of fun. And then I thought, well, you don't want to just copy the idea straight from Shawn, do you? And then I remembered Shawn actually created the BookTube Parasite deck. He's obviously, intellectually okay with the idea of people parasiting content off him. And I wanted to see what it would be like. So that's what I'm going to try today. I went back in my videos, not to the first time that I talked about new releases on this channel, because that was one of the first. I was talking about new releases all the time, but for a while at the very beginning of this channel, back in 2016, it didn't really occur to me that I could do an actual haul on camera, because I'd seen them done on BookTube, but they seemed to require editing skills, and I don't have any more editing skills now than I did then. So I would open the day's mail in the presence of my dogs alone, and then I would curate. I would show you 3 or 4 books in videos, and that was a lot of fun. But then I decided to try a mail haul, an actual mail haul, where I'm opening packages on camera and I don't know anything about what I'm going to get ahead of time. I'm going to leave a link to the video that was the very first time I did that, where I'm opening the packages on camera. I'm wearing the whole time. Will the opening not go well? Do I really need editing skills for this? I talk about the books as first impressions only. And then I actually did, for the first time, a Steve Pyramid at the end. It was 4 books, so I thought that would be a manageable video to look back on. I vaguely remember that day where I had received a shipment of mail earlier in the day that was large. It was 10 or 11 books, and then I got a smaller shipment later in the day. And it was 4 books. I thought we'd go through them and sort of look at them retrospectively. I've got the bean in the window there. It was very strange to think I know exactly what I was doing on that couch. It's the same couch, but it was against a different wall in a different place with different dogs. My darling Lucy was on my left-hand side, directly under my left elbow in every one of those videos. And my pointer, Malin, was on my right-hand side, and they were sound asleep in the video. Sound asleep in a way, with a completeness, an absorption that Frida has never experienced. Never. It'll be years before she sleeps that way. But I want to go over the 4 books, and then we'll see where we stand on them. Because I'm pretty sure that I had not read any of them when I got them. I think they were all new to me. The first one was Longing for Home by Lisa Wayman. This is a self-published immigrant experience novel that was part of a theme that ran through early videos of mine. Because at the time, 5 years ago, I was the U.S. Editor for the indie branch of the historical novel society. So, Historical Novel Society, they're dedicated to historical fiction, and they had an indie branch for self-published and subsidy-published books that weren't, mainstream publishers. And I got a ton of those in the mail, a ton, every week. And because they were self-published books, I would never have seen them otherwise. I love that part of the job. Absolutely loved it. And Longing for Home was one of the books that I got an endless stream of them until that I left that job and that stream dried up, and I miss it. It's the one aspect of that job that I miss is seeing all of those books, keeping abreast of a lot of those books, making contact with a lot of those authors. That was a lot of fun. I read a lot of good historical fiction that way. Longing for Home by Lisa Wayman didn't turn out to be outstandingly good. It was a heartfelt but fairly average novel, I think probably built in large part along the author's family heritage, the author's family memories. A lot of books, historical fiction that I read in that job was exactly that. It was historical fiction built along family memories. It was lightly fictionalized family folklore. And that always has a whiff of stiffness and piety about it that is antithetical to good storytelling. And if I remember correctly, and I think I'm remembering Longing for Home correctly, that was the fault here. Then the next book was mainstream published, and this was The Long Weekend, not by Robert Graves, but by Adrian Tinniswood. The historian Adrian Tinniswood did a look at pre-World War I Britain through the lens of one opulent country estate. And it was good. It was my worry when I first heard about it was that it would be derivative of other works that had gone before it. It was very much derivative of other works that had gone before it. It was still really good. And in the intervening years, I have liked more and more of what I've read by this author. So the Long Weekend is not long as a book, and it reads fairly quickly. I could recommend it. Then the next book was The Yosting Affair by J.L. Oakley. This is about an English-trained espionage agent who goes to Nazi-occupied Norway in order to disrupt the occupation. I had read The Shetland Bus by David Howarth, the great historian David Howarth, and that was minimal preparation for this book. This book first of all, it was an extremely attractive package, just physically. This was another self-published historical novel that I got through the Historical Novel Society, and a lot of them, the author did not go the extra mile to make the book look professional. This was not a case. This looked and felt handled wonderfully, and was also really, really good. Multi-layered, very, very powerful in the climax. This is it's a war espionage novel, but it's also a fiction template in which the author tears apart the main character. Not all authors are willing to do that, and not all of them do it convincingly. This was, you really felt the ordeal and subsequent narrative arc of this main character. I don't have a copy of the book anymore, and I think it's had a sequel, but and you'll never see it in a bookstore, of course. That's the problem with these indie press books, is that you never see them in bookstores, and they have almost no existence secondhand in used bookstores. We saw just the other day The Forever Queen by Helen Holling, who was my managing editor when I was getting these books at the Historical Novel Society, but you almost never see these things used. I don't know why that is, if it's just that used bookstores don't buy them, or maybe they have such limited distribution in the first place that they're mainly going out to friends and family who won't give them up. One way or another, if I saw a copy of this, I would probably get it to keep it. And then the last of the four books was Free Speech by Timothy Garton-Ash, which I had not read when I opened it on camera, and was a little leery about, because even then we were entering an age where free speech has been transforming before our very eyes in the time since this video came out. And I'm pointing at my iPad here. Since 2016, free speech has been transforming before our eyes in some very interesting and alarming ways. There's been a lot of talking head cable news commentary about how, sure, free speech is one thing, but private corporations don't have to adhere to it. They can do anything they want. Said almost with a kind of hand-washing relief when those private corporations are muzzling the right people. Incredibly dangerous stuff. And it's still true. In fact, it's far more true than... I was worried that Timothy Garton-Ash's book was going to be narrowly prescriptive, that it was going to be essentially fascist correct speech disguised as free speech, that sort of thing. And it didn't turn out to be that way. It was a little bit muddled. I thought a lot of the thinking involved in there, the author makes a set of bullet points, main bullet points throughout the book, and I thought the thinking behind some of them was muddled. And I got the impression while I was reading the book that this author is not typically a muddled thinker. So I don't know if this thing was dashed off or not exhaustively edited, or maybe I wasn't on my game, but one way or another, it wasn't memorable very much. And I haven't had cause to think about it in subsequent years the way I've had cause to think about other free speech related books, because it's a more vital subject now than ever before. It's all around us now. Orwellian, Lenin-style censorship is all around us, and to an extent unapologized for, in a way that I would never have anticipated in the flourishing of the worldwide internet, the information superhighway. The extent to which free expression is cordoned and straitjacketed without any apology, because it happens to be done by private corporations, is, like I said, it's alarming. 6 months ago, less than that, it would have been unthinkable on the 5 major platforms that rule our lives. It would have been unthinkable then. It would have had real world consequences for you if you had devoted any time or attention to speculating on whether or not COVID-19 was perfected in a laboratory in Wuhan. You could not, even 6 months ago, you could not openly talk about the lab release hypothesis that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was engaged in gain-of-function research on viruses found in the wild, and that one of those researched and streamlined, developed viruses, in other words, not a natural thing, escaped from the lab. 6 months ago, you could not have done that without huge warning banners all over your content, without strikes, without stuff being taken down, without stuff being censored on a large number of the large platforms that we all use to communicate with each other. And that's no longer true, but only because forces outside of those platforms have mainstreamed that idea in the meantime. And even so, even though that is the case, I am no bomb-throwing radical. I am here just an old coot talking about books with his dog in the camera. And yet, in 2 sentences, not 2 videos, not 2 strings of videos, not 2 tirades, not 2 fundraising efforts, in 2 sentences, I could get this channel banned from YouTube. 2 sentences are all it would take. That's how hair-trigger and how ready our modern age is to censor free speech. Whether you agree with the speech or not, if the speech isn't harmful, if it isn't, defamatory, then one way or another, the platforms that I'm talking about, the 5 platforms that rule our lives, don't even really make any outward lip service towards valuing free speech. It's correct speech instead that does the job. And you routinely see in the news stories about YouTube or Facebook channels that have been pulled down, silenced, censored, and I think we're looking at that kind of thing with less alarm than we maybe should, because mostly it's the people we want censored who are getting censored. That's always how it starts, and that's very, very dangerous. So, of course, thinking about free speech by Timothy Garton-Ash feels anachronistic. It's the risk you run with a book like this, is that it will outdate. And it has. I mean, some of its contemplations of free speech and what we mean by that and what we don't mean by that are evergreen. Some of them are, but even so, I think the book that the author would write on this same subject now would be very different. And those were the 4 books. So you notice 2 indie books and 2 mainstream books. So we have The Longing for Home, The Long Weekend, The Yosting Affair, and Free Speech. And there are no standouts here. There are not one of the 4 of these is something that I have kept. First of all, I don't have any of them. And also, not one of the 4 of them is something where I look at the haul and think, oh my, I wish I still had that. I never see it, and I really want to reread it. None of them are like that. So that is my revisit of my first official book haul, the one where I'm opening packages blind and doing a Steve Pyramid at the end. And once again, it's just like the videos that I used to make, just going through all of the books on my channel, book by book, where the result is that the books in question just weren't all that outstanding. The Yosting Affair is the most outstanding one of the group. So I don't know. I think exercises like this, although they are fun, Shawn on his video did a huge number of books. On my channel, that will almost never be the case, and I think that videos like this underscore for me the fact that there are very few, comparatively few, standout books in any publishing season. I've had people say to me, talking about my year-end book list, at the end of every year, I do the year's best and worst books in the 15 or 16 genres that I read. So it ends up being over 100 books that are on one list or another when you add them all up. And I've had some friends say, in fact, in this room, once, back before the pandemic, I had a group of people in this room. One of them said, there's just too many books. You ought to just do 10 best and 10 worst. And another person who was not a reviewer, but rather in the publishing industry, just jumped right in and said, "Oh, no, this is a very small number. This is a very small number of the books that come out. The books come out in endless torrents. And 110, 120 books is a small fraction of that." And this is underscoring, exercises like this underscore that I'm hardly ever going to ping down on any mail haul that has stuff that I still have, or that I miss, or that I consider in retrospect to be a landmark of some kind. I mean, a totally different dog. She's not sleepy, not at all. Anyway, that was my BookTube Parasite bit for today, just to go back and look at my first book haul, and the results are slightly inconclusive. I imagine there are book hauls from 2016 that I could go back on that I would have a lot more to say on the subject. You keep in mind, with the book hauls, one of the reasons that's prompted my earlier retrospective series is something that a lot of you have said over the years, which is that you've seen me open books and hot take them, give my initial reactions to them, but then I don't circle back. Do I? You hadn't even been born yet. You hadn't even been born yet. And you never met Lucy. No, and you don't remember Malin. No. She doesn't remember her first few months on Earth. Her first few months here were spent in the company of my very old and very sick pointer, Malin. And I often wondered if Frida remembered her. Frida has a pretty good memory. But then one day, last year, on our walk, we ran across a black and white spotted pointer, a female pointer who was identical to Malin. And Frida, her reaction was, "I've never seen a dog like that before." And it kind of broke my heart, because it meant she does not remember Malin, and she never met Lucy. So it's a clean break. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap this up for now. It was kind of fun in a way going back to these books, but I think the direction we should do is forward, like Time's arrow. Thank you, BookTube.